What tone do I have to speak at for everybody down back to hear me?
Wow.
Can you hear me down there?
Like that, yeah.
Like that? Okay. Meeting is called to order for the Medford Housing Authority at 5:37 on April 18, 2012. Roll call, Mr. Executive Director.
Commissioner McGillicuddy.
Present.
Commissioner Young.
Here.
Commissioner Luongo.
Present.
Commissioner Baumeister.
Here.
4 in the affirmative.
Everybody rise, we'll pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The reading of the notice of the meeting and certificate as to the service of notice of the meeting.
Notice of special meeting. Notice is hereby given in accordance with Section 19, Chapter 30A of the Massachusetts General Laws that there will be a regular meeting of the members of the Medford Housing Authority on Wednesday, April 18th, 2012 at 121 Riverside Avenue, Medford, Mass. At 5:30 p.m. The agenda's attached. Robert Cavelli, Secretary.
Thank you.
I move approval.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Baumeister moves approval. Commissioner Luongo seconds. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'd like to move that we table that until our regular monthly meeting in May.
Motion to table the minutes of the previous meeting to our monthly meeting in May. You have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Young. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Any unfinished business, Mr. Executive Director?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. New business. Approval of resolution number 1201 to update the applicant and continued occupancy policy, ACOP.
Mr. Chairman, there was, we had the meeting with the RAB, when was that meeting, Judy?
A week ago Wednesday.
A week ago Wednesday, and we talked about the annual plan and the ACOP, and the Resident Advisory Board was on board with it, and I think there was one little change we had to make, and it's highlighted here that the state family list will be incorporated into the federal family waiting list by date and time of application and the appropriate bedroom size and priority category to associate with federalization of LaPree Village, and that was the only change.
Any questions? No questions. Commissioner Luongo moves approval.
Second.
Commissioner Young seconds. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. Roll call.
I need a roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Commissioner McGillicuddy.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Luongo.
Yes.
Commissioner Baumeister.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative.
Item B, approval of resolution number 1202, federal lease, modifying federal lease to add addendum of maintenance charges effective 6/1/2012.
Mr. Chairman, our maintenance charges were outdated and old, and we decided to update the maintenance charges to our residents. Again, we discussed this with the Resident Advisory Board last week, and we all came to the conclusion that these current charges and changes are reflective of today's actual costs.
Any questions? Any questions?
No.
Move approval.
Move approval.
Commissioner Young moves approval. Commissioner Baumeister seconds. Those in
No, I
favor?
didn't second it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll second it.
Commissioner Luongo seconds. Those in favor? Those
Aye.
opposed?
I need a roll call vote.
The ayes have it. We need a roll call, Mr. Director.
Commissioner McGillicuddy.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Luongo.
Yes.
Commissioner Baumeister.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative.
Item C, discuss the audit report.
Mr. Chairman, may I start it off?
You may.
Okay. First thing I'd like to say about the audit report is the employees of the Medford Housing Authority Board of Commissioners are taking it very seriously. Medford Housing Authority is not broke. We are not bankrupt. We have very healthy reserves. We have $6 million, over $6 million in the bank. We're a high performer. Our properties look great, and our vacancies are minimal. The MHA is complying with the HUD request to develop a comprehensive corrective action plan, which we will discuss tonight. Before we get into that, I want to introduce to you our fee accountant, Rick Fenton, CPA. Rick Fenton is our new fee accountant. He has over 33 years of audit and accounting experience within the housing industry. So we asked Rick to come down and talk about the audit and the financials of the Medford Housing Authority. And Rick Fenton is right over there. Thank you, Rick.
I think Bob asked me here. Actually, my partner, Teresa, who you may have met, is the person who services the Medford Housing Authority. But together, she and I have been in business a long time. I've been in serving housing authorities for over 33 years. And I guess we feel like we've seen just about everything. And we're very familiar with audits. We don't do audits. We function basically to support housing authorities. We're more or less on your side when it comes to producing information, reports, doing the accounting. We take responsibility for coordinating budgets and so on and so forth. So we're very familiar with audits and dealing with audits when they happen. And so I've prepared a statement for the board members to help.
Thank you.
Just to say that when audits occurred, the purpose of an audit is really to come in and review systems and procedures and to define deficiencies. An auditor never comes in and says, boy, you're doing a great job here, and you're doing a great job here, and this is excellent, and this is wonderful. What they tend to say is, we've looked at things, and these are the deficiencies that you have, and they need to be corrected. And so in this way, this most recent audit is similar to most audits in that it has identified deficiencies or weaknesses or things that need to be corrected. And in talking with Bob, I clearly understand that it's his intention to deal seriously with these issues and to take whatever steps are needed to remedy the problem or the situation. We do about 80 housing authorities throughout New England, and I can't think of a single one of them that's without any deficiencies or without some area that can be improved upon. The industry that you're in is very highly regulated. It's got all kinds of rules and regulations that are constantly changing, and it takes quite a bit to keep up with all of that, which is why as a firm, for example, we're specialized in providing housing authorities with services because we can't do anything but keep up with that and do the job well. I'm very familiar with Inspector General audits. I mean, they come in, and in this case, they've come in with some specific complaints, basically, that have been identified. And clearly, their intention was to pursue that. And in the audit report, they really do identify what they did find and what they looked for but found no problems with. And I think that's an interesting part of things, too, is because there's several areas where they found no problems at all, despite looking quite seriously at it. I think, as I point out, in this letter, that there's many resources available to the authority to deal with whatever problems have been identified. HUD themselves are really in the business to not only oversee housing authorities, but make sure that there's available to them proper rules and compliance resources. Other housing authorities as well are a very rich resource in terms of how they have dealt with issues in the past, what policies and procedures they have, who can be helpful. There's also training and consultants that are available to deal with these issues. It's just really part of the nature of managing and operating these programs that the authority administers. So I'm not here to make it sound as though it's not something serious that needs to be taken care of. I'm really here to say that this is not so unusual and that there's really the need to take it seriously and address the problem, but there's many resources available to you with which to do that. And that's pretty much all I have to say unless there's questions. I can confirm that the Housing Authority is in excellent shape financially. As you know, there are strong programs and there's some weaker programs, but overall the Housing Authority is in very good financial shape. Some authorities that have had problems such as this have not been in good financial shape and have not had the resources as available to them to deal with the issues, but I'm confident that whatever is needed, the Housing Authority has the resources with which to deal with this. Anything else that I forgot to say, Bob, or any questions that any of the board members have?
I think you covered it all, unless any of the board members have any questions.
And if there's any way that we can be helpful, you know, we definitely stand ready to serve the authority.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have schematic ready to pass out?
What I'd like now to do is to pass out the first draft of the Medford Housing Authority Action Plan, where we will take comprehensive corrective action to correct all 3 findings in the audit report. I'm sure you've all read the audit report by now. There were 3 findings. One was in Section A, Section 1 was in procurement, and the third one was in Section 8.
Chairman, if I may. Tom,
Sir.
I'm not speaking out loud. No. There's an email here from... Huh? Okay, I'll talk loud. Can people hear me? There's an email here that I have that's, I guess the fellow's name is McCarthy Morgan.
Yep.
And he was at the exit meeting.
Yep.
And I'm reading a paragraph here. We would have to look at the files ourselves. Don't worry. Even though the dollar figure looks scary, you will not have to pay back any money as a result of this finding. Okay?
That's correct.
What did he mean by
Can't hear you. Do you have a mic or something? They can't, you might have to stand up, Mike.
I got an email here from McCarthy Morgan. Dog says McCarthy Morgan. We would have to look at the files ourselves. Don't worry. Even though the dollar figure looks scary, you will not have to pay back any money as a result of this finding. Can you explain that?
Right. Before we had the exit meeting with Morgan, or maybe it was during the exit meeting with Morgan, I asked him about that, and I told him, Morgan, we do a rent reasonableness study. My inspector ensures me that her files are correct, and I want to re-examine your 20 files that you took. They only took 20 files out of 1,000 and assumed all 1,000 were wrong. So Morgan sent that email back to me saying that even though the number looks scary, we won't have to pay it back. However, part of the action plan is to hire a contractor to re-examine a sample or all of the files that HUD looked at to prove that the rents we paid were reasonable. We are saying that we did not overpay any of our landlords. We do a rent reasonableness, and traditionally we pay less than the fair market values And once we do the audit, the re-examination, we will prove that fact.
Another email here, Bob. The OIG, Office of Inspector General, finished its audit. Did you read the report? I read it 3 times. And it says here, this is from you, no problems in finance. The credit cards, the waiting list, maintenance inventory. I mean, there was no problem with the audit report. I mean,
No problems with finance. He didn't find any problems with the financial statements. At the time, there was no problem with the credit cards. There was no problems with the waiting list. The 3 problems.
this all happened within a month. We went to the exit meeting in February.
You were there, right?
Yeah, I was there.
And what 3 issues did he bring up?
Those are the 3, but in the meantime, you sent an email telling us, you know, the Inspector General finished its audit. Did you read the report? I read it, and it wasn't very good at all.
There was 3 issues, Mike, that he found deficiencies on, and we are going to correct them. With the board's permission, I would like to go forward with the action plan that we're developing.
Go forward and explain the whole.
There were 3 deficiencies. Finding number 1 was with Section 8. So the first action plan, and this is a draft, number 1, we're going to develop a rent reasonableness policy through amendment of the Section 8 administrative plan. Number 2, still on finding 1, develop a rent reasonableness procedure utilizing outside contractor to provide data incorporating 9 factors as required by 24 CFR 982.507, which covers rent reasonableness. 3, re-examine housing choice voucher program units that had rent determinations conducted between July 2010 and September 2011. Page 2, still on finding number 1. Hire a consultant who specializes in writing Section 8 policies and procedures. Number 5, develop rent reasonableness procedures utilizing outside contractor to provide data incorporating the 9 factors as required by 24 CFR 982.507 HUD rule. Number 6, review all change with staff and provide appropriate training. Number 7, comply with 24 CFR 982.507 when no lease will be approved without a valid rent reasonableness determination, using all 9 of those HUD criteria. And number 8, hire a consultant to re-examine the determination of rent units leased between July 2010 and to determination of reasonableness rents paid. I think that's a duplicate of 5. But for finding number 1, that is the action plan that we're going to come up with. It's going to take a few months to get those contractors and vendors in place, but that's finding number 1. Finding number 2 was procurement. Number 9, implement effective management controls pursuant to HUD regulations, specifically 24 CFR 85.36 and the MHA procurement policy. 10, and this is very important, advertise for and hire a procurement officer. 11, advertise for and hire outside consultant to perform independent cost estimates for audited procurements as indicated by HUD. 12, immediately require independent cost estimates, solicitation of bids or price quotes, and maintain documentation supporting the basis for contract awards for all procurements. 13, immediately execute contracts for procurement. 14, develop and immediately maintain contract register. 15, award all procurement transactions under full and open competition. 16, implement effective management controls pursuant to HUD regulations 24 CFR 85.36 and the MHA procurement policy. And 17, all senior staff, including the executive director, have enrolled in state-approved procurement classes. That was finding number 2. Finding number 3, again, dealt with Section 8. Number 18, develop and implement a written policy to ensure timely reinspection of units through the amendment of the Section 8 administrative plan. Number 19, develop and implement a written policy for the abatement of housing assistance payments to landlords through amendment of Section 8 administrative plan. Number 20, review housing assistance payments made to landlords for units not abated and repay the Housing Choice Voucher Program for ineligible housing assistance payments from non-federal funds. And last, 21, draft a procedure for and utilize outside contractors to perform all reinspection of units that fail quality standard inspections through the amendment of the Section 8 administrative plan. So this is the plan I'm going to review with my board and solicit any changes or additions that they may want, and then send this in to HUD by April 30th with a matrix.
The matrix will define all the timeframes where we anticipate being able to implement all these changes. Some will be quick, some will take a few months depending upon whether we have to advertise it. We'll try to see if we have anyone in-house. If we don't, then we'll go outside. And by the time you advertise and set up appointments, it could take anywhere from 3 to 4 months to get that part of it going. But the plan will be in place for next Wednesday in an Excel spreadsheet format, and that will be submitted after review with legal counsel and the board and sent to HUD on April 30th. Any questions?
You're taking questions from the audience?
We'll take.
Okay. In the audit report that was designated, it states here that on the 21st of February of this year, the Housing Authority, I'm assuming through the Executive Director, was informed preliminarily of the report. We had an exit conference on February 24th. On March 3rd, the report was disseminated. Mr. Cavelli wrote a letter on March 7th, 4 days later. His very last sentence states the following to the Inspector General from the Boston region. It says, in conclusion, the Medford Housing Authority found the review to be helpful. The Inspector General's Inspector General auditor to be professional and forthright. Quote, we believe all concerns have been addressed and corrected. Now that's March 7th, 4 days after the letter went out. Here we are, April 18th, and now we're coming out with a plan that has to be implemented, but in the letter it says it was corrected. And with all due respect to the Executive Director, you just indicated, sir, that you believe that your rents were fair and reasonable, but at the same time, there's a $36,000 repayment because it's alleged in the audit report that they weren't fair and reasonable because the guidelines weren't followed. All the rules, all the regulations, all these guidelines that are being talked about in the audit report, page after page, where it says you failed to do this, you failed to do that. Contracts, no bid contracts went up. Procurements, big issue, procurements. You have a letter from the Office of Community Development indicating that the uncooperative nature from the Executive Director's office back in responding to concerns regarding the HUD part of the program, right there, the federal part of the program, community block grant funding part of the program. This isn't the council or one person saying it. These are other governmental agencies who've taken the opportunity to review this. And I think the concern is more than, oh, we're going to implement these programs. If you're going to implement these programs now, well, what the heck was going on before? This is the day-to-day operation of this of your housing authority. And that's the concern. $8 million. The City of Medford's all over the news because $8 million, up or down, cannot be justified, substantiated, and if it can't, somebody has to pay for it. And it can't come, and it shouldn't come from the future people who want to become into the housing authority, whether they're physically handicapped, mentally handicapped, or just regular senior citizens. God forbid the feds put a stop on this programming until this gets itself resolved. Who's paying the price?
I think you may be, apparently you didn't listen to Mr. Fenton.
Mr. Who?
Mr. Fenton.
I heard Mr. Fenton loud and clear. And what Mr. Fenton's talking about, I would have assumed, should have been ongoing practice. And if you don't have a procurement officer, shame on the board for allowing this.
That is why the audit was done, taking the steps to correct the problem.
Gene, you've been around a long time. This board's been around a long time. This has never, ever happened before.
As it says in Mr. Fenton's letter, anytime there's a change in management, everything should be revisited. And maybe the things were not revisited, but they're being visited now and they're being taken care of.
This audit was predicated on a written complaint, not a verbal telephone call, a written complaint. And somebody, whoever wrote that complaint, must have been aware that something wasn't going right within this department.
And it's proven in the audit. We're doing it. Nothing is ever perfect, and we're trying to correct everything now. Any other questions?
Through the chair, I'd just like to comment that the board is limited to what we can and can't do. We set policy. We don't run the day-to-day operations at all. I don't have hands-on to day-to-day operations. I set the policies, and they're supposed to follow what we vote on and agree on. We don't do day-to-day. I mean, I have my own job, but I do overlook the things that are being done here. And as soon as this came to our attention, we went to our attorney and asked him to look over and give us a hand with it. I'm not an expert, by all means, and I have to lean on somebody like our attorney who's very well in the housing authority business for a lot of years to give me advice. But to think that I saw the news, I saw the city council meeting last night. To think that we had some control over this, we didn't. We weren't aware of it. And the minute we were aware of it, we went and said, something's got to be done. We're not going to look the other way. There is difficulties here. And we asked Mr. Covelli to answer them. And we asked him to answer them by the 25th because he has to answer to HUD by the 30th. We want to look over and make sure everything's covered. That's the extent of what we can do. But I can't do the day-to-day operations of the housing authority. It's impossible. When I ask questions, I expect answers. And if I didn't get answers, then I would go to my attorney and say, I need an answer about this, and let him work on it. The attorney, Jeff Briscoe, is the Medford Housing Authority's attorney. He's not Bob Covelli's attorney. He's for the people. And, you know, he represents us, the board of directors. But to think that we had control over any of this, I'm sorry, it's truly, truly not fair. We had nothing to do with day-to-day operations or day-to-day operations.
And could I add one thing to what Sylvia said? What she said is exactly true. And we had a meeting, I'm not sure the exact date, in February with HUD. And we couldn't stay in the room all together, then it would have to be a public meeting with HUD. So when Sylvia left, Gene came in. When Gene left, I came in. And so 2 commissioners. And the people from HUD, and I'm disgusted to say this, I kept asking about, they went over with me, and I'm not an accountant, I don't understand finance, right? And they brought up the $7.3 million. I said, well, what is that? They just, well, don't worry about it, that's not a problem. And I asked it how many times? 3, 4 times. And they said, no, that's the way we do it, and it gets ironed out in some type of accountant's pocket. It's not a problem. And everything came out great. So everybody's telling me everything's great, especially HUD. I'm like, I guess I'll have to go along with it. But it just bothered me. I kept asking about $7.3 million. What does it mean? And they said, don't worry about it. And that's coming straight from HUD. I forget the people's names. A lady from Connecticut. Bob Covelli may have the names, I'm not sure.
Morgan was one of them, and I forget the lady from Connecticut's name.
Yeah, and
Christina.
So,
But the concern that you're alluding to, the $7.6 million, whatever it might be, if we even take that off the table, you have $1.3 million and contracts that went out under no bid. And you should be concerned from the executive director or the director of the Office of Community Development. She writes on page 5 It is clear that despite meetings, written communications, and other technical support, the authority, at a minimum, is not communicating with this office in a manner that allows the staff to perform its reasonable responsibility to monitor and to ensure subrecipient compliance with the community block grant fund requirements. Key. Of more serious concern is whether the authority is able to comply with requirements. Regardless, I am prepared to recommend this to the mayor. You have a lack of communication from your executive director to the City of Medford, to the Medford City Council last year, when we asked why and how the office was raided by the state police and what was taken. And his answer to the council was, I don't have to answer to you people. You know something? We all live and work in the same city for this one same purpose, to help those people who want to get into public housing.
Not on the agenda.
And if this place was raided, we ought to know why. What was the purpose that the state police came in here and raided the office? To me, that's a telling example of something that's wrong that's going on.
Hey, Bob, I agree with you. We didn't know why. And then when we got questioned by the state police and we can't really talk about it, we had no idea why it was raided. And I could only guess what they were after by the questions they were asking me, but they asked me not to discuss it because it's an ongoing investigation. The 7.3 million I kept asking about. The other money I didn't know about. I didn't know, well, none of us knew. Maybe it should have went out on bids by procedure. It did not. It's being investigated by a higher authority than we are right now, so we're going to see what they come up with.
That item that you just brought up with, from Lauren,
Yes.
we weren't aware of that until this week, and Lauren sent it over, and I've given it to Bob and asked him to clear it up as quickly as possible. Totally unaware that
Mr. Chairman,
did not go on.
I can appreciate wanting to clear it up, but why is there a need to clear it up? Why hasn't this just been ongoing as part of the ongoing daily practice of the executive director, who handles on a daily basis?
And if you ask each board member about that particular instance, there was never a problem with Lawrence.
Lauren's letter came out of almost desperation because she'd been in contact with Bob and didn't answer him in a fashion that he should have answered. Lauren's right on the stick. I mean, Lauren is probably one of the best development directors in the Commonwealth. I mean, she's a straight shooter. And yesterday morning, Bob, Michael Pacious, and myself went down and they said to Bob, answer her. That's what she wants, is an answer. Give her an answer. And I don't know whether you got in touch with her yesterday or today, but that's what this letter is all about. She went down to Walkland Court. They went down to Walkland Court. They found out that some of the work wasn't being done properly. She wanted answers. Then the company went out of business. And then there were some other issues down there. And she was asking you about some of the problems, and she wasn't getting anywhere with it. That's why this letter is here. I got it Saturday.
Through the chair, I got the letter, I'm reviewing it. I've had several meetings with Lauren DiLorenzo and my staff. I've got 30, 40 emails going back to Lauren DiLorenzo and her staff. And I will address the letter. I'll get her all the information that she needs, and I'll make sure that both of those issues get rectified.
Why didn't this happen before, Bob?
Michael, I had several meetings with Lauren DiLorenzo.
But you never gave her the information that she wanted.
I gave her some information that she wanted, Michael, and then she asked for more information. But this is not on the agenda tonight, Mike, so maybe we should not discuss it.
I'm sick of hearing this isn't on the agenda. Because let me tell you, everyone in this hall, I've been wanting to discuss this audit for weeks. And there's always an obstacle. So if it wasn't for me asking to have this put on the agenda tonight, it wouldn't be on here tonight. And this should have been discussed a while back. We just want answers. $1,366,000 in no bid contract. Unheard of. And when you ask someone, they blame someone else. Someone take the blame. And Bob, you've done a hell of a job for a year and a half. Well, we have. The maintenance, everybody. And then all this happens. And you sit there and say, we did nothing wrong. How many times did I ask her about it? Well, we did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong. You got the state police, you got HUD, you got DHCD, you got the Boston Globe, you got the Medford Mercury, you got Channel 25 Fox, but nothing's wrong. Thank you.
Sam?
I'd like to address, I'm sorry,
Bob Penta.
Bob Penta. I'd like to, I'm the Section 8 supervisor.
Your name?
Sam Perry. I'm taking, I take full responsibility for the issues that are addressed here. Although, all of this happened, just before I took the position. However, that being said, what I'd like to address is, first of all, Bob did not change anything. You had an executive director here, John Greco, who had been here for, I don't know how many years, but forever. You had Ann Petrus, who had been here in Section 8 as the director forever. I find it interesting that none of this came up under their jurisdiction.
Right.
It comes up under Bob's because for some disgruntled group of people that sent a letter into HUD. Now, that being said, I want to address the abatement. The abatement issue has already been addressed. We're already abating. We started abating. I started the process back in February. As of February 1st, we started abating, and that's prior to all of this. So the abatement issue has already been resolved. The rent reasonableness issue, I'm still perplexed on that. I wish Debbie was here, my housing inspector, to back this up, but I'm not an inspector, so I don't know everything that's involved with the inspection process. However, I do know that we have been doing rent reasonableness. And I think the audit supports that. What the audit has said is that we didn't cover the 9 points that are required. I think we only covered 5 or 6 of the points. We were using, excuse me?
2.
No, I think we covered more than 2. But in any event, my point is that there was a process put in place by Ann Petrus, who passed it on to our housing inspector, Debbie Giuliano, to use a system that would simplify the rent reasonableness process. Debbie did what she was instructed to do by a person who had a wealth of knowledge in Ann Petrus. And I don't know Ann. I only met her a few times. My understanding is that she had a wealth of knowledge in Section 8. So for Ann to give a directive to somebody and say, start using this, I don't think anybody would question that. So she was given a directive to use this rental meter, which is mentioned in the audit. And the rental meter, unfortunately, did not cover the 9 points that are required by HUD. We are addressing that. We've already changed. We're no longer using that rental meter. We've gone to a different system. And so I believe that issue as well has been addressed. We're also looking at the files that HUD, purportedly said we overpaid landlords on. When it comes to the, back to the abatement issue, Debbie does a great job when she does an inspection, or whether it's Debbie or whether it's our contractor, PHI. We do send letters out to the landlords. And when I first came into Medford Housing, I read the letter, and I wasn't a supervisor, I was a Section 8 coordinator. And the letter says in it, and I came from a previous housing authority where we were abating. I did ask on several occasions why we are not abating. The letter says if these repairs aren't done, we're going to abate. We weren't abating. It's water under the bridge. It's been that way. All I ever have heard since coming to Medford is that's the way we always did it. Well, my argument has been just because you've done it that way doesn't mean it's right. And Bob Cavelli did nothing. He did not change anything. He did not put any procedures in place that weren't already there. I just think, unfortunately, Bob's taken a bad rap here for things that have been done here for the past umpteen years that were never addressed, and I don't know where these auditors were for the past 10, 15 years. I gotta believe that there were other audits done. If they were, why wasn't this stuff brought up previously, under the previous administration? I am taking these two issues, as far as Section 8, very seriously. They have been addressed. We are scrutinizing everything. We have put procedures in place, and hopefully this isn't going to continue or ever happen again in the future. But it is stuff that has gone on here in Medford Housing for a long time. It's not something that happened during this 2010 to 2011 period. And unfortunately, Bob's taken the brunt of what happened here for a long time. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, Jim.
I feel like I'm witnessing a lynch mob. It's making me sick. Bob has been here for a short time. He's been here. He's done more for this building, I know he's done for others, this building, than Greco did in 20 years. Okay? My father was here for 20 years. They had a leak in his building. They take pictures and come up and they pat him on the head. Next year or two, we're going to get the whole place waterproof. Finally, after a lot of time gone by. A lot of the things that are happening now are just like Sam said. They were just the way the rules were followed. Why wasn't there an audit? Because the guy that was doing the accounting on weekends knew about it all the time until he got booted. And now he just shows you what's wrong with the books. It's that simple. You got an angry guy. So he goes in and he tells you what he thinks is wrong, which he's just been patting us on the head for every time he comes in, for as long as he's been here. I just think this is a shame. We talked about in meetings about cameras that were hidden in the building with price tags on them that were out of warranty that Harry bought, and Greco knew about, and no one ever put together. What about that? What about the shit that happened back then? Why isn't it happening? Why is this happening today? And we all know about going off the agenda like Mr. Penta does to talk about people coming in with warrants and taking computers. It's got nothing to do with an audit. That's just a pure run them out of town attitude. That's all that is. People came here today to stick up for Mr. Bob Cavelli because he's helped us. The place is $6 million in the red. Let's just fix the problems that a lot of them were created before or with just a misunderstanding on how to do things. Fix them and go on.
Black,
$6 million in the black, not in the red.
I meant in the black. Sorry.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
Explain the $7 million, where that comes from, where it's going. You know, well, people don't really understand that part. Can you explain that, please?
I'll try, Mr.
Can I interject before you? I'd like to ask Mr. Fenton to explain.
Yeah, I think I can explain it. I think that the $7 million is the size of the whole program. So the money that flows in to the authority from HUD is $7 million that then flows out to the landlords to pay the landlords. And so what HUD is really doing is saying the exposure here is, that large, that there's an activity here that's over $7 million that needs to be managed and administered properly. And if there's something about it that is not managed properly, then, you know, that's at risk, or at least some portion of it is at risk. The auditors, you know, frequently, you know, use numbers that are the largest. They like to give you an idea of how much they're talking about. It doesn't mean that all of it was misspent or was misallocated or was in any way improper. It just is really trying to give you an idea of just the size of the program. And if in certain cases payments were made that they're questioning, it doesn't mean that all of it is, you know, was misused. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. No, that's a good answer, thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of people are looking on the paper and see $7 million and they think that someone took off with it. I mean, the average person doesn't understand this. And that was a good explanation, and I even said to the director yesterday, I think that instead of putting off the news media, tell them, talk to them, let them know if they want to call you and ask you about it. Give them the information. And that's very well said, and I think people understand now. A lot of people don't. You know, they see these dollar figures, $1 million here, 400,000 here, and 7 million, and right off the bat, you know, that they're thinking that, you know, someone may be walking off with it. And it just comes into the authority and we pay it out. Section 8, bumps it.
Gene?
Yeah, I've been here 11 years, going on 12. I have seen people that was in the first commission with Harry and them guys sit out back here at nighttime, come in at night, 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night, and put stuff in the trucks, the cars, and everything else from the garages. I wasn't in a position to say anything because I'm a tenant. It's not my job. They got security.
Yeah.
But no one ever said nothing about it.
Wonderful security.
You know, so, I mean, I think, I'm not saying, oh, this 7 million, nothing like that's gone from that, but a lot of bucks can go out of this place. You know, it's just not one thing. And Bob's done a great job. There's no complaints from Bob whatsoever. If you have a complaint against Bob, you're totally wrong.
I don't think I'm wrong. This gentleman said he doesn't think he's wrong. Well, I seem to think that he does, because I had an issue that happened back in January.
Any more comments with names in it?
Excuse me?
Jane, no names.
I didn't say any names.
No, I'm just telling the general audience. Go ahead.
Is that I had an issue that happened to me back in February. I'm sorry, I correct myself. My husband passed away January 14th. I left. It was at my son's house. I came back February 21st and found some items missing out of my closet. I spoke to somebody about it, checked the cameras. Well, they checked the cameras, there was nothing on the cameras, or the camera wasn't in the right position, or whatever. With that,
If I may just interrupt for a minute.
sure.
This doesn't have to do with the audit report.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
But
so-
here's a gentleman who's saying that, you know, that's why I spoke up, or else I would not have said anything. That's not true. The security is not in that building.
Okay, that we will check, and
Okay.
we're gonna get an answer, because Sylvia and I talked about your situation tonight.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Boy, I'm gonna have to get back to this later. Any other comments on the audit without any more disparaging remarks? I think enough of them. Yes, Mr. Lumley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just a simple question. The action plan which was just distributed is labeled a draft. Is there a time frame when the draft will become a final, and who will be working on that, and when do you expect the draft to be finalized?
Mr. Driscoll and Mr. Cavelli have the draft ready. All right, no other questions on the audit?
This is too important an issue. I think sometimes people need to have a clearer understanding as to what's going on. Contrary to what the gentleman said over here, if he doesn't think the place getting raided is not a big deal, I do. Because I think that's very important to know why the building and the office was raided, number one. And number two, the audit that were taking place, whether it be rent reasonableness or what have you, took place between July of 2010 and September of 2011. Now that's under the current administration. This has got nothing to do with who was here before. And if you want to get into this argument of past practices, well, the executive director or whoever he so chose, or working under him, should have known that the past practices are not allowable according to HUD rules and regulations, and we've got to follow the HUD rules and regulations.
Well, we're not aware of it until the audit was done.
I understand that, Gene, but I also
steps.
understand too, people are getting paid to do a job. And as this gentleman just stated, if they're following what used to take place, and it's wrong, then it should have been brought to the attention to have been corrected. Apparently it wasn't. You have in here $1,300,000 in procurement and non-bid contracts. Now, that's all part of the $7.8 million.
We're all over the place. Which one are we talking about?
It's part of the $7.8 million, Gene.
No, it's extra.
It is not.
1.3 is extra.
No, the 1.3 is the outside. The 7.8 is the audit.
Okay.
And additionally to the audit is the 1.3 and the no-bid, non-procurement products. Now, we talk about Mrs. DiLorenzo. You have it's called Mill City Contractors. Wait a minute, that came, it's all part of the audit report, it's in here. It talks about the fact that they came in and they made a bid. They were a brand new company. They didn't even meet the guidelines as required under the RFQ. And the executive director asked to have that amended. Subsequent to having it amended, they went out of business and cost the city an additional amount of money. It came before the council for $150,000 for flooring in Temponi Manor. Then they came back a second time for another $150,000.
You just asked about that, and I told you what we were doing.
I understand that, Gene, but it's part of the day-to-day operation.
And we are working to correct them. We're back in 6 months and see where it's
Why should I
at.
have to come back in 6 months?
Because it's going to take that long to implement all
Well, then you know
the
something? Maybe you need a new administrative staff to correct it, so you don't have to wait and have people trained. That's what they're getting paid for. That's why he's the executive director, and whoever he chooses to work under him. We should not, or you should not have to go through this.
See if Mr. Gregg is available.
If I may, Councilor Pepper. You know, last night you took on the Board of Commissioners. And like Sylvia mentioned a while ago, we make policy. We're as upset as you and the people of Medford. Very embarrassing. It was all right. And another thing, this has nothing to do, believe it or not, with the state police coming in and DHCD. This is another animal altogether.
You're the first person to say
This
that.
came up
Thank you.
2 months ago, where the other thing started back in, I think, June. It'll be almost a year and a couple more months. The DHCD, the state end of it, okay? But, you know, I think you were very unfair last night in taking on or even mentioning the Board of Commissioners. We do the best we can. We meet once a month. We really can't get involved in day-to-day operation. That's right in the Commissioner's handbook, and we shouldn't. And sometimes we do, okay? And sometimes the director will call one of us and ask our opinion. But, you know, the DHCD thing, that's one thing. The raid, the computers, the telephones, and, you know, I don't know if the place is even bugged. Okay? I mean, we all were questioned. I never had a cop in my 73 years show me a badge. One night we're leaving here one night and the guy knocks on my window in the car and I see a badge. You know, this has never happened to me in my lifetime. And then we had to go in town. It's really frightening. I mean, you know, I lived a pretty decent life. They go up to my house and knock on the door and scared the hell out of my wife. State police and someone from the Inspector General. Then they take me in here and question me for an hour and a half. Bill, Sylvia, Gene. And then this thing comes about. This, we were completely surprised. I was.
You knew about it when we knew about it when we read the transcript about the raid. And like I say, that's about all we can say on it because on a subpoena they asked us not to speak about. But they're not asking us questions just on this, they're hitting us with a bunch of different directions about the way it is.
Through the chair.
Yes.
And I wanna let you know that we wanna know as much as they do. And I was called by Sean Murphy of the Boston Globe, and I said, when you find out what's wrong, please call me and tell me, because they won't tell us anything. I had to testify in front of the grand jury, and I have no idea what it's about. It's about John Doe versus the state of Massachusetts. That's as much information as we were given. Who, what, where, when. Did we know that contracts weren't given out? No, because I sat at meetings and saying, where are the contracts? We're not getting contracts. We usually get contracts. Nobody had an answer. I was told we're not doing any work in other developments. We're only working at LaPree. That's what I was told, and that was by John Lonigan during meeting. A couple of times, a couple of different months, I asked, and I never got the right answer, that they were putting work out to be done without going through the proper procurement procedures. It's totally humiliating and embarrassing to everybody in this room. Not only us, the board members, but to the residents too. To have to read about your own city and your own housing development in paper after paper. But right now, Mr. Penta, there's nothing that we can do until they tell us. DHCD has told us nothing about what they came in and took our, well, they didn't take the computers and stuff, but they came in and took files. September was when the police came in and took computers and phones and whatnot. Nobody can tell us anything. And we're just told that we have to wait until the investigation's over. Do you know how hard that is? What can we do about it? It's impossible to do something that you don't know anything about. And my guesstimation, and I'll just say my guesstimation, is they're not finding anything. Otherwise, there would have been indictments or what have you. But so far, nothing's come out of it. How long is this going to go on for? I don't know, but knowing the government, it can go on for a year. It can go on for 2 years. Nobody will give us any answers. How do we act on no answers? It's impossible. This board has done everything it can to try and find out what, where, when, and how. And this board has gotten no answers for anyone. I have to ask the man from the Boston Globe to call me and tell me what he finds out. I'm humiliated. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. And it's not under my watch. I have nothing to do with it. I don't do the everyday administration. I want it corrected, and tonight, this is the first time I get anything showing the first step into correcting it. We asked for this information by the 25th. That's why we're having another meeting April 25th. This is a special meeting we're having tonight. We understand people have questions. We have questions. So why wouldn't the public have questions? But thank you all, and I'm sorry. You know, it just gets to me that when I have no control and I get accused of not doing things I should be doing, it's not true.
If I could ask a question of that gentleman through the chair about that 7.3 million. So what it is that if a two-bedroom apartment should be going under those 9 points for, say, $1,200, and the City of Medford paid $1,300, then the housing authority paid $1,300, let's say. They're looking at it.
Yeah.
If at the end of all this they find out, which they probably aren't overpaying, because I know landlords, you know, don't get rich off of Section 8. Right? You know what I mean?
In some sense, yes, you're absolutely right.
It wouldn't be the whole amount because they only overpaid a certain dollar figure.
It's true. It's basically.
No, it's taken out of require future years' money.